Yo, guys, what is up? Mox here with another Borderlands 3 video, and today I am so excited to share with you guys my Radiofl4ktive build. It's an absolute beast, and currently my new favorite build. It's a lot of fun to play with. Now, if you didn't know, on January 23rd, there was a hotfix that increased the Gamma Burst Enlightenment on Flak to now give him, while Gamma Burst is active, gain 115% bonus radiation damage. Now, Gamma Burst Flak was fine before, but now it's really good. I had never played a Gamma Burst Flak build. I hadn't watched any Gamma Burst build videos, so I was really excited because I didn't know anything about it, and I was able to experiment and come up with something that I'm really happy to share with you guys. This is using a lot of tricks and mechanics that I've learned over my time of using Flak. Now, for those of you that just want to see the skills and the gear and don't care about the explanations, because I know some people are like that, let me do that for you guys. I haven't done that in the past, but I think you guys will like that. So from now on in build videos, we're just going to do this. I'll show you the skill tree. This is the skill tree. This is my gear. And if that is all you wanted to know, that's all you wanted to see, I'm happy you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But for those of you that want the explanation of why I'm using a Moonfire with Rack Attack and all the other mechanics that are going on here, let me break them down for you guys so that you can get a better understanding of what's happening here. So first off, this is a mechanic that I made a video on, and not that many people watched it, so you guys may be this first time hearing this. But something we discovered was weapons that have Rack Attack Anointment on them proc action skill end effects when you pull them out. So I have radiation damage on my stopgap, so I'm doing radiation damage because I just pulled out the Moonfire. That radiation damage will go away. Now I'm not doing radiation damage. Now I pull out the Moonfire, which has the Rack Attack Anointment. That's going to proc my ASE anointments. Now I get radiation damage. If I switch it out for an Incendiary Shield, now nothing.
Get angry, girl.
Now I'm going to have radiation. My only anointment is for Incendiary damage. When I switch to my Rack Pack weapon, anointed weapon, doesn't need to be a Moonfire. I now have Incendiary damage on top of that. Really cool thing that you guys can exploit if you want to. This build doesn't require it, but it is a really cool thing to use. ASC anointments, on action skill and anointments, are some of the best in the game right now, and being able to use them to their fullest is really awesome. So Gamma Burst Flak can suffer sometimes when he can't use ASC anointments. With this, we can benefit from while Gamma Burst is active, gain 150% bonus radiation damage, and we can also benefit from on action skill and anointments, which makes this build ridiculous. There is some crazy damage that we can pump out with this. Now, everything else that we're using is giving us survivability, bonus damage, and utility, and I'll break down the rest. So let's finish talking about the weapons and the gear while we're here. I personally like using either a stopgap or a red suit. Now, I don't have a red suit with an ASE anointment for bonus damage. I will be farming for one, but at the moment I don't. I would really like to have one because there's some cool things I'd like to do with this and the Elemental Projector, but at the moment I don't. So I've been using a stopgap with bonus radiation damage. I don't have an It's Piss with anything else on it besides on grenade throw and a radiation, but I'd love one with something like incendiary damage or shock damage or corrosive damage. So you can use a It's Piss with on grenade throw, which works really well, or a It's Piss with like radiation damage and then a shield with bonus incendiary damage. Any shield, any combo with the shield and an It's Piss with bonus damage is going to be really nice for us here. Now, I like using the stopgap because it gives us survivability, and I like using the red suit because it gives us immunity to radiation. The rerouter is also a really nice shield for just pumping out damage. I will get in more in depth with that, but for my general mobbing setup, I use a stopgap and an It's Piss is my go-to. Next, we're using an Atom Bomb Auto Idol. This is going to give our aura damage, our aura burst damage, and our aura radius more damage. If you don't know what this refers to, radiation damage as an element, when it is inflicted to an enemy, they get a dot. When they explode dealing radiation damage and spreading the radiation. This is going to give us more radiation explosion damage and radius. This is really nice because we don't have as much utility in the form of area of effect damage and mobbing, something that like Amara or Chain Zane are really good at. So this is a nice tool to have, and what I prefer for mobbing is an auto bomb. Auto idol is going to give us survivability and give us some area damage and give us bonus damage. Super nice to have. Now I'm going to talk about this Deadeye in a second, but for the ideal class mod you're going to be using for this is either a Red Fang or a Deadeye. Now the Red Fang is a great class mod that is going to give you more survivability and some utility because your pets are going to taunt all enemies. Now for straight DPS, the Deadeye is really nice. I have a +5. This is going to give our pets 35% additional damage, and Flak, it will have bonus damage against enemies. And with the one that we have right now, we're going to have +5 into extra projectile chance. Now this is huge and pairs in with some of the weapons that we're going to be using. This Becca is insane. I have never featured the Becca in one of my builds. This was gifted to me by a streamer named Vanderforge, and a lot of this gear was gifted to me by Vanderforge. I didn't have any Gamma Burst anointment, so shout out to that guy. He is amazing. Make sure to go check him out, twitch.tv/Vanderforge. Now, weapons like the Becca have something called Unlisted Projectiles. Now, in this game, how extra projectiles work, whether you're on Zane, whether you're on Flak, when you fire an extra projectile from a single shot weapon like this one, you are going to get one other projectile, right? So, alright, let's show it on this. So, like, the Moonfire only fires one. When we proc Deadeye with it, it's going to shoot twice, right? 2 projectiles. Now, if we use something like a Brainstormer that has 7 projectiles, 7 projectiles will turn into 8 when we proc Deadeye. So you're not getting as much use with it with a Brainstormer. You're getting a lot better use when you're using a Moonfire, but you are going to get insane use out of it when you're using something like a Becca. Now, with the Becca, if you didn't know, the Becca has something called Unlisted Projectiles in this game, where it only states that we have 1 projectile, when in fact we are shooting 3. The bullet splits into 3 projectiles, as you can see, 3 projectiles. Now those 2 other projectiles are Unlisted Projectiles, meaning that when we proc Deadeye with it, instead of shooting 4 projectiles, we shoot 6. Shooting 6 projectiles 50% of the time with the Becca, a high base damage Jacob's assault rifle with a solid mag and a spammable weapon, makes this thing absolutely ridiculous. It leads to some crazy DPS, as you've seen, and is so fun to use. This melts any Mayhem 4 enemy, regardless of if they're armored or not armored. We melted Wotan with this, and we're using radiation and normal bullets. It is crazy and a really cool strategy to use, because instead of getting 1 projectile, you're going from 1 projectile to 6, which is so cool for general use. And if you're not using a Becca, I would recommend using a Red Fang. We've got some nice Red Fangs here. Red Fangs are a good class mod because they're going to give you even more survivability and some utility because they're taunted. Now, there are some other weapons that we can use with this build, and I've been playing around with a lot of them. In the save file, which will be in the Discord, we have a lot of other good weapons that we're using here, such as the Gatling gun with Gamma Burst Anointment. This build is very versatile. Any gun that you find with Gamma Burst Anointment is going to be really good for you. We've got Hellwalkers with Gamma Burst Anointment, Maggies with Gamma Burst Anointment. All of this gear was sent to me by that guy Vanderforge. We've got Recursions with Gamma Burst Anointment. From my playing around with this build, any weapon that you use that you can do some solid damage, especially Jacob's weapons, is going to be really nice here. It doesn't need to be the Becca. The Becca you get from Hammerlock's Legendary Hunt quest. It is a guaranteed reward from that, but it is not guaranteed to get the Gamma Burst Anointment. So I didn't want to make a build just using the Becca. There are a lot of guns that you can use with this. Everblast, Rosen, Thorns, Laser Sploders, but the most interesting one that I found was the Becca, and that's why I wanted to show it off to you guys and explain the extra projectiles thing for you. Now, the other things that you may have noticed that we were using was a Zetsev's Eruption. Now, I use this in the Iron Maiden Mose build. Basically, I'm just going to cover it real quick, but when you use the Zetsev's Eruption and you reload it, enemies will be debuffed by 160% when they get hit. Obviously, this is a dummy, so he's not going to take that damage. But when you use the Zetsev's Eruption in conjunction with an Its Piss, enemies will get debuffed like crazy and allow us to melt them in a few shots. That's what you saw against General Trant, right? Captain Trant. Lastly, you may have seen a Brainstormer with Lifesteal. This is an awesome tool to have on a Gamma Burst Flak build. I used this weapon in my Seeing Red Flak build, which was a while ago. Basically, the concept is when your Gamma Burst goes down, you're very vulnerable. When your Gamma Burst goes down, you're very vulnerable. You don't have much healing, and you need to get your action skill back quickly. With a Brainstormer, which chains to enemies, and Megavore, you are going to crit enemies like crazy and be able to use head count to get your action skill back almost instantly. Now, we are using a Lifesteal Brainstormer because when our Gamma Burst goes down, it's going to proc our on-action skill and anointments. So switch to your Brainstormer when your action skill is about to go down, spray some enemies. It's going to keep you alive and get your action skill back really quickly. Throw down that action skill, and you're right back to using the Becca or whatever weapon you got with Gamma Burst Anointment. Super, super cool. Now, for the skill tree, I don't think anything too crazy. There's nothing too radical decision-wise here. Persistent Hunter for increased gun damage and action skill duration. Ferocity for more damage. I really like Who Rescue to. It's going to give us health regeneration, and it's going to give us lifesteal for our pet, so that when I shoot things, when I'm going to shoot a lot of things, we're going to keep our pet up constantly, which is great for us. He Bites is awesome for the pet damage. I just realized that we already have a point from our class mod in here if you're using a Red Fang, which is nice, but I typically do not because I'm using a Deadeye, so that's why I put a point there. You only need 1 point here. Frenzy and He Bites works really well because He Bites is going to give us free stacks of Frenzy, which is going to give us damage, which is really nice. I didn't go into this because I don't need movement speed and damage for my pet. I did go into this because I'm not sharing damage. I didn't want it. Our pet is fine. We're using Gamma Burst. Our pet is going to be alive and staying alive from our conversion damage. And we're fine because we have so much health regen. Now, Barbaric Yap is really, really nice because it's going to give us 200% pet bonuses. We're using this with a Spider Ant Scorcher for health regeneration and elemental damage. Very, very nice to have. You can use the Great Horn Skag. Sometimes I switch between them, but for the most part, we're using a lot of elemental damage, and so the Scorcher is great for that. However, a lot of the Jacob's weapons don't need the elemental damage unless you have the Gamma Burst Anoint, so Great Horn Skag is a good one too. Really up to you. Both are good. Lastly, I was kind of torn here. We're going Shared Spirit because when we get low health, it's going to be able to give our pet some tankiness to keep us alive, which is great. And then Pack Tactics for more damage and more health. Lastly, Leave No Trace so that we don't have to reload as much and we can fire for longer. Interplanetary Stalker is going to give us pet damage and more damage, and then bonus damages against certain things. Head count is huge here. Gamma Burst needs to be up almost all the time. When your Gamma Burst is down, it hurts, and that's why we're using a Brainstormer along with head count to get that back real quick. Two Fang with Unlisted Projectiles and Single Shot weapons is nuts. Really, really awesome, especially when you have a +5. Big Game, Hunter skill duration bonuses and skill effects, which is great because we're using things like Frenzy. And Most Dangerous Game, more gun damage, critical hit damage, and pet damage when we kill a badass. Now, these points, Grim Harvest, I wasn't sure about. I originally had them in Second Intention. You can do either. 2 points into Second Intention isn't that much reload speed. And I figured, why not? Let's just go more damage. We love damage. Damage equals good. So we went Grim Harvest. Even though it isn't that much damage, we're going to get some more action skill damage and pet damage, which is always nice to have. Galactic Shadow for the critical hit damage, and Megavore is going to give us more critical hit chance whenever, which synergizes really well with the Brainstormer and allows us to keep our action skill up all the time. Lastly, these augments, Empathetic Rage, are nice because it's going to give us more damage, and our Gamma Burst is always up, so it's 20% damage all the time. And Burst Aid is also really nice to give us that health regeneration. Now, sometimes I do like switching to Endurance when I'm in like Slaughter Shaft or Slaughter Star, just so I can keep it up all the time, keep up Gamma Burst without it ever going down. But for the most part, I'd recommend Burst Aid and Empathetic Rage. I believe I've covered everything there. Lastly, some quick tip with Flak is if you whiff Gamma Burst, like if you shoot Gamma Burst up into the air, I don't have a place, I think I could do it now. You have to do it into the air. You can proc your ASE Anointments, which is what I was doing against Graveward. That is a cool trick to use if you don't want to swap to something like a Rack Attack weapon. Now, once again, this Rack Attack you don't need to use. It's really cool to use. You can get Lifesteal with your Brainstormer while you're mobbing. If you get low, you can just quickly pull the Moonfire out, swap to the Brainstormer, and now you'll have Lifesteal. A lot of crazy things that you can do with this. Now, this build is awesome without it, but if you want to push it over the edge, if you want to use some crazy mechanics that we have discovered, that is a really way to do it. Great way to do it. If you're gonna use a weapon with Rack Attack on it, I recommend it being a pistol because your swap times will be shorter. That's why I had used it on a Moonfire, because the swap time seems to be shorter. Now, you can't go like this. Like if you like swap cancel, you won't get it. It does feel like when in my testing, your weapon does have to be out for a short second before switching back. Just keep that in mind if you're not noticing it happening. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Longer breakdown, but we shortened it up in the beginning to show you guys the skill tree. I hope you enjoyed that. There is so many cool things we could do with this build. It's a lot of fun and it's really satisfying to use. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you learned something new, make sure to subscribe, like, comment. Have a good one, guys. Make sure you check out this build and share it with your friends if you enjoyed. And have a good one. Peace!